Hello students, today we are going to discuss a beautiful poem and the name of the poem is A Legend of the Northland. So who is the poet here? The poet is Phoebe Cary. So she is an American poet. Here she has described or she has told a story which is known as Ballad. Though this is a story, but it has been described in a poetic form. So let's start the poem and understand what she has described about it. Let's know about the poet very briefly. So who is the poet here? The poet is Phoebe Cary. She was born on 4th September 1824 in United States. So above all, she was an American poet. So here in this video, what are the things that you will learn? You will learn how to appreciate a poem, as well as there is a great lesson in the poem, and the lesson is that greed always gets punished. So greed is not good. If there is greed, obviously it will get punished. And in this way, you will be familiar with few literary devices that is used in the poem. And here, after this video, you will be able to know how to read a poem with proper tone and intonation. As well as you will be able to learn or able to understand the key areas of the lesson taught and the characters in the poem. So what is the poem about? Let's understand it very briefly. So this is a ballad. So what is a ballad? We'll understand in the later slide. So this poem is about a hungry and tired Saint Peter who asked a woman for cake. But the woman was too greedy and did not give any cake for her store. She tried to make small cake many times, but it seemed a big one to her every time after it was made. And in this way, the woman could not give a piece of cake to Saint Peter because of her greed. She was greedy. So though she made many cakes, but each cake she felt like that was the bigger one, and in this way she could not part with the cake. And all these things anger Saint Peter. So Saint Peter cursed her and transferred her into a woodpecker bird. So in this way, the lady got punishment for her selfishness. This is the whole poem. So here you will get to know this is the short summary, or you can say this is the story, but it is in a poetic form. This kind of poem or song where it narrates a story in short stanza is known as ballad. So this poem is a ballad. Where is this poem a ballad? This poem is a ballad because there is a story in it, and it is described in a poem in short stanza. So the summary is like that. It is all about old lady and who angered Saint Peter because of her greed. So this is the brief summary. So there are two main characters are there, and that are an old lady and Saint Peter. So let's start the poem. So here this is the poem. It is consist of 16 stanza. So listen to me attentively. I will recite the poem for you. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bear's cubs in their funny, furry clothes. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe this true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it, preaching, just as he did, He came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little man was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cake to give him a single one. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Therefore she needed another and still a smaller one, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she could not part with that. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away, so she put them on the shelf. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter, and fire to keep you warm. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring all day in the hard, dry wood. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were worn, black as a coal in the flame. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring for food. So this is the all 16th stanza. Let's understand the poem stanza wise. So here in the first stanza, and here you just remember in each stanza consists of 4 lines. So the first stanza is like that: away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So here it is mentioned that in the Northland, away, away in the Northland, far from our place, and the things or the event has taken place or the story has taken place in the Northland. Northland, I think all of you know, our earth is divided into 2 parts. One is known as North, another one is South. North Pole, South Pole. So near the North Pole, that is mentioned here, Northland, north part of our earth or the land. So there generally the days are few. Generally in that place, in the Northland, the days are few, and the nights are so long. In which season? In winter. In winter season, the days are few and the nights are long in the Northland. So it is impossible for a person to sleep throughout the night, because the nights are long, but the days are short, or you can say few. Where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bear cubs in their funny clothes. So where in that place, in the Northland, they means the people of Northland, they harness means to tie. What do they tie? They tie the swift reindeer. This is the picture of reindeer. They tie the reindeer with or to the sledge. This is the sledge. So they tie or they harness the swift reindeer, faster reindeer to the sledge whenever it snows. That is the area it is generally covered with snow. Whenever they want to travel from one place to another place, they take help of the reindeer, and in this way they travel from one place to another place. And the children, though there is cold, so that's why the children wear funny clothes, and because of their funny clothes, like this kind of clothes, they looks like a bear cub. So in this stanza, it is mentioned that in that place, the people of Northland tie or harness the swift reindeer to the sledge whenever it snows. And the boys or the children wears the cloth, the winter cloth, and because of that winter cloth, it looks like a bear's cough. So in the third stanza, they tell them a curious story. I don't believe this true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. So here the poet is saying that they tell them a curious story. In those time, the people of Northland tell the story to whom? To the children. What kind of story that is? That is a very curious story. Curious means strange story. But the poet is saying, I don't believe this true. But I don't believe. T-I-S, it means this. I don't believe this story is true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell you. But if I tell the tale, T-A-L-E, tale means story. But if I will tell the tale to you, you will able to learn a lesson. Though the story is unbelievable, though the story does not appear true, but whatever it may be, you will able to learn a lesson from that story. Then the story is like this. From the fourth stanza onward, the story is described here. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching, just as he did, So once there was a time when the good Saint Peter, this is a picture of the Saint Peter. Saint Peter means who? Saint Peter means a disciple of Jesus Christ. I hope all of you know Jesus Christ, the Christianity religion. The Saint Peter, generally good Saint Peter, generally at the time he was living in the world below. It is all about the story. The poet is describing. Say that at the time the Saint Peter was living in the earth. In the world means in the earth, and walked about it preaching. So he was walking. She was moving from one place to another place. She was traveling from one place to another place by preaching. Preaching means here to give a religious talk. So he was telling the story of the Jesus Christ. He was telling about their religion. So this is called preaching. Preaching means give a religious talk. And it is the duty of the disciple of Jesus Christ. So it was the duty of Saint Peter, who was traveling one place to another by preaching. And this is the duty of the Saint Peter. So by walking, he came to a door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the earth. So by walking, he came to the door of a cottage. So he came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth. After traveling the most of the places of the earth, at last he came to the door of a cottage, and in that cottage, who was living there? There was a little woman. What was she doing? She was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. This is the hearth. Hearth means fireplace. So there was a little woman who was in the cottage and who was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. And Saint Peter, he was faint. Faint means he was very weak because of fasting. He had not eaten because the day had already passed and he was very hungry. So he asked the little woman a single cake. The Saint Peter asked a single cake from the store of cakes that the lady had. So she asked for a single cake from the stores of cake that the lady had kept. So she made a very little cake. But as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. So there was the store of cakes. But the lady did not give Saint Peter from the store of cakes. And she made a very little cake. But as it baking lay, while she was baking the cake, she looked at it.
and thought it seemed too large to give away. While she was baking, when she saw that, she thought that no, this cake is very large one, and I should not give away. Here, she was very greedy. Though there was the store of cakes, she did not give to Saint Peter, and he started to knead or started to bake a very little cake. Here, it is clear that the lady was very greedy. And she, though she baked the cake, but she did not. Therefore, she needed another. So that's why she needed another cake. And it was a smaller one from the earlier one. It was very small from the earlier one. But when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. But when she looked at the cake, she thought, no, this one is also very bigger one. But she thought like that. But actually, the cake was smaller. The second one, that was a smaller from the earlier. But this time also, though she was greedy, she thought this one is also as large as the first one. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she could not part with that. And once again, she started to needed another one, started to bake another cake. And this time, she took a tiny scrap of dough. This time, she took a small amount of dough. Dough means, do you know? This one is dough. You may say the flour, you can say, and roll it flat. And this time she roll it flat and baked it thin as a wafer. This is the wafer. Wafer means you will able to see here how thin is it. So she baked it as thin as a wafer, but she could not part with that. This was her third cake. But this time also she was so greedy, though it was thin as a wafer. But this time also she could not part with that. Means she could not give to that Saint Peter. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. So here she is saying that my cakes that seem too small. Whenever I eat the cake myself, it looks smaller to me. But whenever it is the time to give away, to give someone very freely, that time it comes to my mind that this was the bigger one. So here you will be able to get the idea how selfish or how greedy the lady was. So she put them on the shelf. So she put them on the rank or the shelf, and she did not give to Saint Peter. Having seen all these things, good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. So, having seen all these things, the good Saint Peter, he grew angry. Saint Peter grew angry because he was very hungry as well as he was very weak because he had not eaten anything throughout the day. And surely such a woman, and the poet is saying that such kind of woman, obviously, it was enough, her activity was enough to provoke a saint. Provoke means to cause to get angry. Means anyone who will be at that place, obviously that person will get angry. And the poet is saying that, and it was enough to provoke a saint. In this way, the Saint Peter grew angry because of the activity of the little woman who was very greedy. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter, and fire to keep you warm. And the Saint Peter grew angry. And he said, you are far too selfish. You are not only selfish, you are the far too selfish to dwell in a human form. You should not live as a human being. You are not. You are such a selfish person. You should not dwell. Dwell means live. You should not live in a human form. because you have the food and shelter. You have food, you have the shelter means home to live, and you have the fire to keep you warm. I think all of you know, in the generally in winter, the people of the western country generally, or northland generally, the people who live in the near the north pole, there is so much cold, so generally they keep fire, the ignite fire to keep them warm. So she had everything. She had the food, she had the shelter, she had the fire, she had fire to keep herself warm. But she was far too selfish, though she had everything. Now you shall build as the birds do. And you should not live in human form, because you have the everything, but you are unable to part with that. You could not give anything to a person. So you shall build as the birds do. So you should live like a bird, and you shall get your scanty food by boring and boring all day in the hard dry wood. So the sandpeter grew angry and told that you must not live in a human form. You must live like a bird. You must get your food by boring and boring, and all the day in the hard dry wood. Food is easy for you to eat, food is available for you, but you are not able to give it to anyone, so you are very far too selfish. So you should live like a bird. And I think all of you know, here you will able to see the picture of a bird, here the woodpecker. So how does it get its food? By boring on the dry wood. So here it gets a little insect, and by eating it he feeds its hunger. So you have to live like a bird. Then off she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. And this was the cause. This was the cause of the Saint Peter. And by after telling Saint Peter this word to the women, the little woman went through the chimney. Chimney, I think all of you know what does mean chimney. In generally home, you will find these kind of things where the generally smoke comes out. So the little woman, she went through the chimney, never speaking a word. She could not speak even a word to the Saint Peter, and out of the top of the chimney flew a woodpecker, as that little woman had changed into a woodpecker. She had changed into a bird. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same. But all the rest of her clothes were worn black as a coal in the flame. The lady had worn a scarlet, means red color cap on her head, and that was there, and she turned into a woodpecker. But all the rest of her clothes were burned. So whatever she had worn, that burn as black, that burn black as a coal in the flame. Means all the clothes she had wore it burned, and she come out from the chimney by changing herself into a woodpecker. It means the little woman turned into a bird. And every country schoolboy had seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring for food. And the poet is saying that every country schoolboy, country means village. Generally, the people generally who live outside of the town, generally in country means here village. Generally, village schoolboy, they have seen her. They have seen the little woman in the wood. Wood means forest. Where she lives? Now she lives in the trees, in the forest till this very day. And how does she get her food? She gets her food by boring and boring. So this is all about the poem A Legend of the Northland. So in this poem, in this 16 stanzas of poem, you will find few poetic devices, or you can say literary devices. What are those literary devices? First of all, we will understand rhyming scheme. So this is the first stanza of the poem. The poem is like that. Just listen how am I reciting it. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So, in this poem, you will find these two words. One is through, another one is few. These are the rhyming pair. These are the rhyming pair. So here, if we will name the first line H A alphabetically, this one which will be B. So this one will be C, and the H, these are the rhyming pair through and few, so it will be named as B. So the rhyming scheme of the poem is A B C B. There are in this stanza there are only one pair, means that is few and the through, they are rhymed with each other, so they are named B. So in this way the rhyming scheme of the poem is A B C B. So what is the next poetic device? Next poetic device is alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is the repetition of a constant sound, of a consonant sound in two or more close words. So here this is the first stanza 1. Here you will have to see here, away, away in the Northland. Here it is mentioned the consonant sound. Consonant means I think all of you know A, E, I, O, U. These are the vowels, and the remaining ones are the consonants. So whenever there is a repetition of consonant sound in two or more close words, that is known as alliteration. You will have to see here that, they, and here them, through. So here these are the sound the, th, t is a consonant, t is a consonant, th is a consonant. So here you will read this one, that the sound is coming, they, the sound is coming, them, that is the pronunciation the, and through the sound is coming. So that's why ts sound that is repeated here. So in this stanza there is the alliteration. Let's understand the next stanza. Here in the stanza 3 you will find here, so here they tell them a curious story, I don't believe this true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Here in the same way, in the first line of the stanza 3, here you will find the, they, them. So this here there is the alliteration. In this way you will have to see here yet and you. Y sound is repeated here. So there is the alliteration. In this way, learn, L sound, LL, consonant sound, L, learn, lesson. This is also alliteration. Like that here, tell, tail, to. So here T is repeated here. So these are all about alliteration. What is the next poetic device? Next poetic device is the repetition. Repetition is a literary device in which a word or phrase is repeated two or more times. So alliteration was about the repetition of consonant sounds, but repetition means in a literary device it is a word or phrase. You will find a word or phrase repeated in two or more times. Word and phrases. So you will see the first stanza of the poem here, away, away. This is, the word is repeated twice. So that's why this is repetition. I hope all of you understood the poetic devices. So let's understand recapitulate or summarize the poem. So this poem is about Saint Peter who was hungry and tired, and he asked a little woman for cake. But the little woman was very greedy and she could not give any cake to the Saint Peter. And she tried. She made 3 cakes that were smaller. But even though that cakes were smaller, but she felt like that was the larger one. And in this way, she could not give any food or any cake to Saint Peter. The Saint Peter was very hungry and tired, and all these happenings, the things that took place, it angered Saint Peter. So Saint Peter calls the little woman, and the little woman turned into a woodpecker. And here, the moral of the story is that we must not be selfish. We have to help others. Whenever a person is hungry or tired, or we should at least offer him water or food. So, if someone will be selfish, though he or she will be punished for it. One day he or she will punished for it. So this is all about the poem, and let's discuss few question answer. The first question is, which country does this legend belong to? This legend belongs to Northland. How were the days and nights there? The days were short and the nights were long. How did the people drive their sledges when it snowed? They drove them with the help of reindeer. So this is the end of the class. I hope all of you enjoyed it.